You know, I talk about the ends of video games a lot, don't I? In 2014, it was final levels, 2015, it was final bosses, 2016, it was endings, and 2017, it was all three wrapped into one. So I figured, why not do the opposite? Sure, the ending of a video game is very important, as it's going to be the last impression of the game that you have until you play it again. However, the beginning is also very important, because it's the first part of the game that you experience, and if a game has a bad beginning, chances are you're not going to want to stay to see what else it has in store. Heck, even if it's a game you already know you like, it might discourage you from replaying it, as replaying it would mean having to trudge through that awful beginning part again. However, as you can see by the title, that's not what we're focusing on today. Rather, we're going to be focusing on the best of the best. The beginnings that start things off with a bang, that explain how to play the game without being overbearing, and just in general, make you excited for the game you're about to play. Same rules as usual apply, one per franchise and only games I've played. Now with all that said, let's begin. The opening sequence of Batman Arkham Asylum is truly something awesome to behold. The opening cutscene shows Batman driving Joker over to Arkham Asylum in the Batmobile, and I have to say, it looks really cool. And then once the first moments of gameplay start, you see the prison guards escorting Joker further into the asylum as the credits start playing. And then right when you think they've put Joker away, he puts his plan into action, escaping from the guard's grip and making it clear that he's the one in control of Arkham Asylum now, and he's got you trapped. I know I didn't give much detail here, but at the same time there's not much detail to give. It's a simple yet awesome intro to a simple yet awesome story, and it manages to cram a lot of awesome into a very short interval of time, and throws you into the action rather quickly. And honestly, that's enough in my book. You know, most tutorial levels have similar themes to them. Typically they're bright and happy and very simple looking. Psychonauts says screw that and gives you a war zone as your tutorial level. Coach Oleander's basic branding looks friggin' awesome. No matter where you are, it really feels intense. And it's not like it looks the same throughout the entire level either. When you get to different parts of the level, the appearance changes. But no matter what, it always looks like an intense battle's being waged. Not to mention, the level's challenge matches up to its appearance as well. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not super hard. After all, it is a tutorial level, but it's not insultingly easy either. It's fairly challenging, but it's easy enough so you can get to grips with how everything in the game works. I swear, that spike tunnel segment is actually pretty difficult. It's just the right level of challenging not to be frustrating, but at the same time when you make it to the end, you feel like you accomplished something. When you see that you did it so fast that Coach Oleander wasn't even ready for you. Yeah, you give me that merit badge. I earned it. You know, one game series that's always great at building up its atmosphere is BioShock. And I think that the original BioShock does a great job of introducing you to the world of Rapture right at the beginning. At the very beginning of the game, without any prompting, the game guides you to the bathysphere where you go down and you see just the huge extent of what Rapture is. Although before you get to feast your eyes on the city, you see a video of Andrew Ryan explaining the purpose behind Rapture and why he created it. And before you can get out of the bathysphere, you see a splicer tearing someone up in a very dark atmosphere, building up just what these things are capable of. You're quickly introduced to Atlas, a very trustworthy voice that serves as your companion throughout most of the game. And after fighting your way through some splicers and seeing the dilapidated remains of what was once Rapture, you inject your first plasmid, and as you wake up from the shock, you see it out of the corner of your eye. A Big Daddy. You don't even get the full view of it, which builds it up as something really intimidating, which it is. No matter when in the game you come across these things, they're never a cakewalk. And when you see it, you know it's gonna be a big deal. After all, it's on the front cover of the game. And the best part is, throughout most of the moments I mentioned, it's not really grand or booming. All the music and the atmosphere is very calm and subdued, which really adds to it in my opinion. This whole intro does a great job of building up the mystery, wonder, and fear that all reside in this world that you're about to spend the game exploring. And honestly, that's a great way to start off. You know, forced loss battles can be an effective tool if used at the beginning of the game to sort of build up how powerful the enemy you're going up against is. And while I've seen this trope used plenty of times, particularly in the Mario RPGs, I think the best time I've seen it was in Infamous 2. The fight with the beast is pretty short, but pretty fun, and teaches you some of the core gameplay mechanics while having a little bit of variety. But I think the real highlight here, oddly enough, is the background. You see Empire City, the setting of the first game, going up in flames. It's clear that this thing is powerful, and it's clear that you're no match for it. This fight that you're doing right now is not to kill it, it's just to slow it down enough so you can escape. It's made clear, even before the first moments of gameplay, that you cannot beat this thing in the state that you're in. You need to get more powerful if you want to stand a chance. This intro does a great job of building up the intimidation factor of the beast, which is present throughout the entire game. Whenever you pause, you see how close this thing is to catching you. That is how big of a deal it is. And this intro couldn't have done a better job of demonstrating that. So, Epic Mickey, you got a game starring Mickey Mouse that's a lot darker than most things you would expect from Disney, at least in terms of the stuff involving Mickey. How do you get across that this is a dark game right from the get-go? I know, how about have the game start off by Mickey getting kidnapped by a giant ink monster that he created, have it eat him at one point, then chain him up to a table and have the Mad Doctor try to rip Mickey's heart out? Yep. That's the road we're going down here. Also, before I continue, keep in mind, the only time the Mad Doctor has ever appeared before this is in arguably the most disturbing Mickey Mouse cartoon of all time. After fighting this giant pocket knife thing, which is actually pretty easy because, you know, it's the first moment of gameplay in the entire game, you escape from Dark Beauty Castle. Which, by the way, I think I should mention that Dark Beauty Castle is also the final level of the game, which I find really cool, that the tutorial level of the game is also the final and most difficult level you face. I mean, it certainly looks the part of a final level, but anyway, you make it out and you think things are all hunky-dory and, you know, aren't going to be super creepy anymore. Well, then you get to what seems to be a very twisted take on It's a Small World, and oh my god. Yep, that'll show you just how far this game is willing to go. To turn one of the most innocent and beloved rides at Disney World into something this disturbing. That's friggin' awesome. And then when you make it to the hub world, your main companion, Gus, essentially, albeit unintentionally, tells Mickey, yeah, everything here sucks and it's all your fault. This whole intro, while also having some whimsy of its own, does a great job of making it clear, no, this isn't your traditional happy-go-lucky Disney adventure starring Mickey Mouse. This is something else entirely. And I love it for that. You know, the original Portal had a very isolated and confined feel to it, with basically the only places you could go being the test chambers and them being very small. The beginning of Portal 2 kind of throws that right out the window. After the short intro that introduces Wheatley and establishes that Shell has brain damage in a pretty hilarious way.
And it's not out of the question that you might have a very minor case of serious brain damage.
The walls crumble around you, and you get to see just how spacious Aperture truly is. After getting dropped into what looks like the first room from the original game, you make it through some test chambers with some hilarious dialogue from both the announcer and from Wheatley. What I think's really cool about these test chambers is just how different they look from the original game. They all look run down and overgrown because, well, there's been no maintenance. GLaDOS has been offline for quite a while. Not to mention, it's really cool to see some nature peeking through this usually highly sterilized and highly artificial landscape. But the highlight has gotta be when you make it to the end and you plug in Wheatley, and through his own stupidity, he accidentally wakes up GLaDOS. It's a really imposing scene that shows off GLaDOS's power even after she just woke up, and sets up how much of a threat she's going to be throughout the rest of the game. Between the hilarious introduction for a hilarious character, the intimidating introduction for an intimidating character, and the huge change of atmosphere from the last game to sort of catch you off guard, this is certainly a great place for this game to start. You know, I think the thing that makes Danganronpa 2's intro really stand out is how it takes your knowledge from the first game and uses it to completely screw with your expectations and leave you asking a crap ton of questions right at the beginning. So we start off with the introduction, and wait a minute, this is the exact same introduction to Hope's Peak Academy that we got in the first game. Why? Why does it have such a good reputation after everything that happened there? Okay, so we're all gathered up in a classroom. This looks kind of familiar. Hey, that guy over there, he kind of looks like Byakuya, but fattened. Wait a minute, that is Byakuya? What the heck is he doing here? Okay, so this is when Monokuma comes in, right? And, Usami. Okay, a new character, and we're on an island now. So when does the killing start? Huh? The goal here is to get along with everyone? I mean, I'm not crazy, right? The first game was about teenagers being forced to kill each other, correct? And now it's about getting along and singing Kumbaya? I mean, look at this right here. This scene on the beach, this is about as sappy as you can get. Oh, he's showing up now, isn't he? Yep, there's Monokuma. Okay, now I see what's going on here. It's almost as if the game's trolling you at the beginning by trying to fool you into thinking they abandoned the basic premise of the series. I also have to give credit to the first Monokuma theater, as it's a hilarious fourth wall break. And shortly into the game, they reveal a plot twist that was a huge deal and revealed at the end of the first game. It's almost as if to say, hey, we know you already know this, we're not going to waste your time and insult your intelligence by pretending it's a secret. This beginning's all about confusing you and subverting your expectations, which is exactly what I would want from a series like this. I'd go into more detail, but it's pretty easy to march right into spoiler territory when talking about this series. Although, why stop with messing with your expectations from the last game in the series when you can do it with your expectations for the entire genre of video games you're playing? Yeah, that's right, I'm talking about Undertale. Undertale is a game made to subvert the tropes you typically find in RPGs, and the first segment of it does a great job at that. At the very beginning, there's the tutorial where you first meet Flowey. He seems like a nice guy, but it turns out he's actually evil. The area you proceed through after that tutorial is some ruins, where you solve puzzles and fight enemies, but you're probably going to want to spare them as they introduce that mechanic to you. This is all to lure you into a false sense of familiarity. A false sense of familiarity that gets ripped away from you right when you get to the first boss. You see, when you were sparing enemies earlier, there was a little indicator on the spare option that would let you know that sparing them would end the fight. With Toriel, there is no such indicator, so you figure sparing's not really going to do much. After exhausting your other options, you figure it's going to be okay to start attacking Toriel. After all, this is how it works in other RPGs, right? Typically the mentor boss you beat in battle, and they're just like, oh, I'm impressed with how strong you are. Here, though, it freaking kills her. And worse yet, Flowey shows up right afterwards to immediately mock you for doing this. So you figure, just reset and keep sparing Toriel until she accepts it. And that works. And then Flowey shows up, and you realize that killing Toriel still counted, because Flowey still knows what you did. What can I say? It's a great way to use a player's previous knowledge of other games to mess with them. And I think that's a lot of what Undertale was going for. You know, if there's one thing I tend to really hate about the beginnings of video games, it's taking too long to get you into the main action of the game. Even if the game itself is really long, that doesn't excuse an intro that goes on for way too long. I'm looking directly at you, Kingdom Hearts 2. However, there is one game that does this that I think does it very well. Saints Row 4. In this GTA-style game, it takes you 3 missions before you can actually get to the main city of the game. So, why am I saying this is one of the best intros I've seen? Because those 3 missions are friggin' awesome! So what exactly do you do in these 3 missions? Well, the first one, before you even get to see what your character looks like, you're going on this military mission, infiltrating a base, and killing Cyrus Temple, one of the main villains of the last game, and then climbing on top of a nuclear warhead to disable it. Then you're greeted with the toughest part of any Saints Row game, creating your character. And then after that, what do you know, you're president, and you get to see most of the main characters in the game. And I swear, some of these lines seem really befitting of a certain president who's currently in power.
Here's the latest approval poll. We lost 20 points, we can get them back.
They're at 20 points.
The president's words were taken out of context.
Kinsey, what's the right context for, and I quote, I'm the patron saint of America, we should probably look into changing the Pledge of Allegiance to one nation under me?
And then aliens show up and start abducting all your cabinet members, and you rush for your weapons and try to fight them off. But it's not enough, and you end up getting abducted and placed inside a simulation of a 1950s sitcom. It's a funny parody, and once you fought your way through, you get placed in a city simulation, and then the game really begins. I think the main reason I have a problem with long beginnings to video games is because they tend to be slow and boring. This right here is anything but slow and boring. It's fast-paced, hilarious, and just the right amount of insanity to set you up for the rest of the game. So what would be the best intro in any game I've played? Well, I think it would be one that fits the tone of the game, that teaches you how to play, but without holding your hand in the slightest. That intro would be the beginning to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. So how do you make a tutorial for a game that's all about vast landscapes, exploration, and freedom? Simple. Have all of that at the beginning, with a bit of training wheels on. For the beginning of Breath of the Wild, you're stuck on the Great Plateau until you do a couple tasks. The Great Plateau is a very, very small portion of the larger map of Hyrule. However, even an incredibly small portion of that map is still pretty big. In order to get off the plateau, you have to complete all 4 shrines, each one giving you one of the powers that you'll have with you throughout the rest of the game. They also make you climb to the top of the tower there before you can do the shrines. But it's not like they make you do this stuff for no reason. The game doesn't actually tell you, but rather shows you what performing these tasks will do for you in the long run, demonstrating why you would want to do them once you've gained the freedom of exploring the entire world. And getting to each of these shrines will require you to master gameplay mechanics that you're going to need once you're in the larger area of the game. Sure, there's simple tasks like fighting enemies and picking up items, but then there are more complex tasks that you also need to perform. For example, some of the shrines are at higher altitude levels in the plateau. Those areas are very cold and you'll freeze if you go up there without doing anything first. Luckily, the game nudges you in the right direction by giving you access to peppers and in the description telling you that they'll warm you up. After eating them and nothing happening, you eventually figure out on your own how to cook them, and then that'll create a meal that'll warm you up so you can go on to the shrines. This is an example of a great way to teach you how to do stuff. It doesn't actually tell you how to do it, but it nudges you in the right direction so you'll figure it out on your own. Meanwhile, you've got the old man here on this plateau, here to give you some helpful advice at different parts. And by the time you've done everything the old man has asked you to do, you've learned all the skills you're going to need to go out in the outside world, and once you zoom out, you realize just how much you have to explore. I'm DeFoffalizer, and it'd be great to see more games start off like this.